I would like to invite them to the stage, JSD and Rob.
All right. Hey, before we get started, this may seem a little strange, but just by a show of hands, how many folks have a wedding ring or a wedding band that have something engraved inside? A few of you, quite a few of you. So when I got engaged, I told my wife I didn't want to wear a ring. My dad never wore a ring. They've been married a long time. Her dad never wore a ring. I never wore a class ring. My wife said to me, "That's sketchy, you're wearing a damn ring." So we compromised by me wearing a ring. But what we decided to do was add a little element of fun and creativity to it. And so we engraved something on each other's ring that was a surprise that was revealed on our wedding day. So on hers, I had something kind of sweet and sentimental engraved. And this is what she engraved on mine, which is absolutely true. So my wife's clearly a bit of a smartass. But the other point of the story here is we're talking about client-agency relationships and the evolution is there's a lot of similarities there. There needs to be, certainly they're rooted in a legal document, but there needs to be an element of playfulness, fun, creativity. We need to come together to co-create and co-develop things. And then, of course, there's got to be a long-term commitment and conviction in what we're doing. So since we're on the marriage theme, you can probably guess what these numbers represent. Sadly, the number on the left represents the number of years the average marriage lasts. The number on the right, 66 years, is how long Starcom, and it came out of Leo Burnett, was our predecessor. But 66 years is how long this relationship has been going on. So Kellogg works with other media agencies around the world, but in some fashion, we've essentially exceeded a real marriage by 6 times. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, that's great, but we're not here to build nice, fuzzy relationships. We're here to drive business. And John and I would agree that strong relationships are really just the means to the end of better business outcomes. So strong relationships enable and engender trust among the talent on both sides, and that empowers people to feel free to innovate more. When strong relationships are done well, there's an alignment that allows us to focus, which drives better effectiveness ultimately. And when done well, the marketer and the agency inspire one another, and that drives overall quality of work in general. So after 66 years, we'd humbly like to think we've learned a few things about what not to do well, but also how to drive some of those better business outcomes. And ultimately, it comes down to 3 simple things: creativity in what we do together, co-creation in how we do it, and conviction in what we're doing in our mutual purpose.
Thank you, Rob. As Martin said, I had the honor to chair the judging panel yesterday, and the breadth and depth of work was truly, truly impressive. But clearly what separated the great work from the good work was creativity. Creativity in how brands are truly connecting and engaging with people. And so it was actually quite a humbling experience to be what we talked about with Charlie and Martin at a media festival, when really it seemed like it was a festival of creativity yesterday. And we spent 8 hours in that dark room while it was beautiful and sunny out by the pool. But I gotta say, I think we all learned a lot. And what was interesting is that way too often we think of creativity that it equals creative, that it's the domain of the creative agency. And I think we heard earlier today, there probably is nothing farther from the truth. And that's not to say that we don't have incredible deep respect for the entire agency ecosystem. But the reality is that the best work at Kellogg, the best work that we saw yesterday, truly has creativity at its heart, media creativity as its DNA. And so the question shouldn't be, are we creative? Because we're all creative, but it's how we apply that creativity. So I want to walk through just a couple examples of how, in working with our media agencies, and specifically Starcom, how we're infusing media creativity all the way up and really at the head of the communication process. So my first example is for a brand that is a North America brand. It's Eggo waffles and now breakfast sandwiches if you're ever across the pond. And this brand was launched in 1962. 1972. I was 2 years old then, so I should have known that. 1972, with a now famous tagline, "Lego my Eggo." And here is a great example, albeit very simple, of how Starcom and Leo Burnett worked together way up front to take a medium that we would consider old school, like print, and really leverage the idea about there's a food so good you just don't want to share it. Let me roll this execution here in print. Now, it's not particularly rocket science, and I actually like stuffed clams, so it's not, but what's interesting is this only came about because we had Starcom and Leo Burnett way upstream talking about the idea. What could we do? What could high-impact print look like? And again, this is one of the vehicles that we used to relaunch the Eggo brand. Another good example is for Pringles, a brand that we recently, a couple years ago, acquired from P&G. Now, Pringles, it has a very heavily millennial target, and as many of you know, they love to customize and hack things, right? They're always messing around with the brand. And no different from Pringles. As you can see here in one of the top areas, they turned the can into candles. They put pasta in the can. We've made speakers with the can. And Starcom, in combination with Gawker, then really used this cultural fuel and developed a contest where we could actually encourage people to hack the brand. And this is an example of a 4-foot playable organ. Just another example of creativity and how the media infused thinking allowed us to strengthen the brand with this key target. And there's clearly other areas of creativity. Again, I think we heard it this morning, none probably more relevant than data, right? And data in and of itself is just ones and zeros. It's practically useless. But when used the right way, it can absolutely enlighten insights. It can fuel ideas, and it can drive storytelling. And we're using data not only in the most obvious ways in digital, but here's an example, partnering with Nielsen Catalina Solutions in the US, along with Starcom, where we're basically trying to look at bypassing 50 years of how we plan and buy linear broadcast TV, moving from demographic proxies from women 25 to 54, and we're now looking at household level data, lapsed users, competitive other products, heavy users. And then what does that do then for the creative messaging? When you move from a proxy target to household level data, this is all in a real emphasis around creativity. I'll turn it back to Rob for co-creation.
Yeah, so that's the first C, as we call it, creativity. Co-creation, we would say, is even more important in today's programmatic environment than ever before. So we started grounding ourselves in that font of modern wisdom, Wikipedia, which tells us that co-creation brings different parties together to share, combine, and renew each other's capabilities to create value through new forms of interaction, new forms of service, and learning. And we think that really applies really nicely to the marketer-agency relationship as well in this new era. So much as a speaker earlier was talking about looking for T-shaped individuals, we feel like our organizations kind of fit together in a similar T-shape in that, in our particular case, Starcom brings a breadth of resources across numerous other clients, categories, consumer targets, and all that metadata that comes with that breadth. And then complementing that, Kellogg brings to the table greater depth on the particular brands that they're closest to, the disciplines that they've developed in-house, as well as the first-party data, that wealth of information they're sitting on that increasingly is driving our understanding of audiences and the path to purchase. So in a lot of ways, it's like the symbiosis in nature. And one of the great examples is the sea anemone and the clownfish. And the clownfish provides nutrients and in turn gets protected by these poisonous spines that they've built up an immunity to. So there's this mutual, long-term, mutually beneficial interaction. So if you boil that down a little bit in a business context, how we think about co-creation and kind of the symbiotic nature in our relationship, first of all, it has to be mutual. And certainly a mutual financial benefit is helpful, but also mutual access, mutual opportunity, mutual inspiration. The second thing is it really does need to be long-term, or at least the benefits are best realized over the long term. Now, we understand today's environment doesn't exactly breed patience, but having the opportunity to really co-create over time is where you see the best benefits. The third element is there really needs to be a bit of a sublimation of ego, and while John tells me daily what a big deal he is, there is an element, just like in nature, where the clownfish doesn't think it's better than the sea anemone or vice versa. Right? They each bring something unique to the table, and they figure out the best way to work together. Which leads to the last one, and again, a lot of talk today, and I'm sure throughout this summit, they really have to be transparent and inclusive. And an interesting distinction is we don't really go for 100% agreement all the time. We have good, healthy debates. We do go for 100% alignment, and really understanding the difference. There may be agendas, we just make sure they're not hidden on either side, and that we're fully inclusive in everything we do. So that brings us to the thorny topic, dun, 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 programmatic. Is it man, machine, or woman? Is it client or agency? And the way we really approach it is that we're not really in an or world. And the first thing both Kellogg and Starcom shares is programmatic is not a strategy. It's a tactic. And it's really a lot more than just hitting a button, although some would lead you to believe that. And we really think of it as a team sport. So this chart here illustrates a little snippet of that thinking where we've spent a lot of time defining very clear roles and responsibilities, in this case with the marketer, Kellogg, in this case, and particularly in North America with Starcom in our role, and with our DSP partners. From everything from who owns the seat on the exchange, through insights and strategy, all the way through activation, down to bill pay and trafficking. So again, it's another example of that synergy, that co-creation, even in a highly automated environment. The other thing about co-creation is in order to co-create, you really also have to co-critique. And as a paying client, you'd expect, and Kellogg has every right, and in fact, we appreciate a very robust evaluation process where they evaluate the agency. What you might be a little surprised, though, is how transparent and open and two-way that dialogue is. So a little while back, we ran into, as all marriages do, a little bit of a rougher patch. And I did a survey with my team on Kellogg and JSD's team. And believe it or not, this is an actual screenshot of one of the surveys that we did in a Wordle. And there's all sorts of positive things you can see in there. Friendly and partnership and supportive. We also see things like inconsistent and moving into more of a dictator mode as opposed to co-creation. So that is transparency. I literally, with my team, we collected the data that drove this, and they went, well, we're obviously not going to share this. And I went, we obviously are. How are we going to improve together and co-create if we don't have transparency on both sides? So to his credit, he could have told us to take a leap. Too bad, he's the client. It's our problem. But instead, what Kellogg did is formed a whole initiative around this. We had a project name, a code name. We co-developed KPIs. And I'm pleased to report in just a few short months, we completely reversed the trends on this type of information. So which leads to the last part of co-creation is in order to co-create, you've also got to co-celebrate. So sometimes that's the silly, from parties and celebrations like you see here on the left, and demonstrating our passion for the brands, to a little more serious, the images on the right are from our internal award and talent recognition program. And what's really cool is that JSD's team comes from Battle Creek to Chicago once a quarter, and actually they participate in recognizing our talent, handing out t-shirts, handing out certificates. And it may seem a little silly, but it goes a long way to motivating talent and delivering on that co-creation.
So the last C is conviction. And as our founder said, the original has a signature, look for it on the box. He had incredible conviction for the product. He also had an amazing conviction for partnerships and people at the core. But conviction does not mean being static. think Rob gave you some visibility into that little bubble chart, and honestly, it's not easy to take a look at that, quite frankly, even today, because we do live in such a highly fragmented, highly dynamic marketplace, and we have had a really long and healthy relationship, but as Rob said, there's times when it gets tough, right? It gets really tough, and so it can't be static. And the reality is, it's not an either-or world. It's a yes-and world. So passion for the brands, that's table stakes, right? Yes, it's passion for the brands. I know Starcom and many of our other media agencies have an absolute, what's best at Kellogg's at the heart. At the same time, we're building enhanced capabilities. So 5 years ago, there was exactly 0 people in the Kellogg's Center of Excellence, Marketing Services Center of Excellence. Today, we're in double digits in what we have hired, not only in North America, but through the rest of our headquarters, regional headquarters. So we are building enhanced capabilities. We're bringing something new to this relationship. There's an incredibly strong relationship, as we talked about, but the reality is there must be new ways of working. So we have introduced many other key partners into this ecosystem, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, etc. And it's not about a gatekeeping relationship. It's about all of us being really clear on what the objective is and all aligned in how we're going to work together. And the last part, I think, is particularly key. I think in this industry, we kind of like winners and losers. We like absolutes. But the fact is, this is definitely an art and a science, right? And we're starting to see science being fused in more and more. And I would honestly say, I think that's where art needs to actually take the reins along with science. We don't want them out of balance. So, very clearly, our journey is not over, but we've had significant innovation. I think that we're doing some fantastic work on our brand building efforts. Our product is improving as measured by return on investment, return on ad spend, volumetric do-tos. We are seeing value and efficiency created. Again, the reality is with margin pressures across, we both have to share in that, but we both have to understand what success looks like, and you have to have a win-win relationship. And there's we're having, quite frankly, we're having much more fun, and this is hard enough. I mean, it's really not that hard to be in Rome, but this is quite beautiful. But the reality is the business is hard, and so you're going to want to have work with people that you enjoy and have fun with. So we just, as a quick recap, these are the 3 C's that we believe are indicative and required to get to good work. Creativity, and again, we saw a ton of it yesterday in the judging panel. Number 2, co-creation. This one Rob talked about. I want to make just one really quick point, because I was on the agency side, and I think there's always this thought, I know it was when I was there, that the agency must have the answer, and we must come from down atop the mountain and give the answer to the client. The reality is it just doesn't work that way anymore. So we've got to be comfortable co-creating, and as a client, we've got to be comfortable with that. And then finally, conviction. And I'll leave it on that as Martin comes up. Right here, we pulled this out of the archives. This is the original, and it's not a contract. It is a client relationship document that Leo Burnett himself signed in 1949. It still exists in our archive, and it still stands today with this relationship. It's not a contract. It's not 50 damn pages. It's a one simple page agreement in how we're going to act with each other. Thank you so much.
That is quite remarkable. Does it talk about 120 days payment terms?
Yeah.
Just wanted to know.
That's on the second page.
Yeah, right.
It's in the addendum. All right. So quite a remarkable relationship, and clearly still working today as much as it did in the past, but clearly also very much an evolved relationship and a relationship that is sort of tuned in with the environment today. I'm going to give you the chance to ask these gentlemen about how they make that work, and if anybody has a question, we have a microphone. We do want you to talk into that microphone because we capture everything on video, and without the microphone, it won't be captured on video. You will be mute. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand. My question to you guys is, in terms of, and it's really to both of you, in terms of all of this new technology coming in, do you feel that disrupts or challenges the relationship, or do you feel that it actually enhances and is a potential to sort of deepen the relationship?
Yeah. I think I can take that first. It's a two-part answer, Martin, because the first is it absolutely disrupted the relationship. When Rob talks about a little bit of a tough patch, I would say that the major impetus for that was the emergence of technical solutions, right, that started to strain our relationship and the role and the service that we were getting from our media agencies. But I will honestly tell you now that I think it's the greatest thing in the world. There are so many opportunities, and our media agencies have taken this disruption, and they've just understood what value, right, that they're going to play and how they build brands. So I was disruptive at first. It now is turning into a great tailwind for us. And the agency remains as important today as it was back in 1949 or through the decades. It's just simply a different way of working.
Rob, how do you? I mean, you talked about it as mentioned a little bit, but how do you see it sort of keeping its health?
Crap! I can't even believe you said that. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's the only thing to add is after the disruption and after we kind of found the new way of working, it changes the types of conversations we're having. So the technology and the automation is freeing up our talent, and frankly, we completely restructured our team on our side. And as things are more automated, we needed, frankly, less junior talent for certain skills, certain tasks. And we're having much more strategic, much higher level conversations with JSD and his team,
right,
which is very rewarding and fulfilling for folks,
and
as well as driving the business.
And as far as you can see, I know, JSD, you have a global remit. Is this difficult to sort of take into other parts of the world, or are they actually running ahead of you?
No, I've got the benefit of having the global media role as well as the North America team, so I have visibility to both.
Yeah.
And really, again, so Starcom's up here, of course, and we've got wonderful other media agencies, Kara, and specifically in Europe and Mindshare and parts of Asia Pac. And what we're seeing is this groundswell. All of them really are taking the reins. We have a lot because of our footprint. There's disproportionate investment in some areas that accelerate that. But this is a global phenomenon that is not the domain of any one region, and it's just accelerating.
Okay. Questions from the audience? Raise your hand and raise it high. Yes, all the way there in the back. The microphone is coming to you, and then your voice will come to all of us. Thank you, Birgit.
Thank you. Christian Arm from TUI Travel. With such a long relationship, how do you manage sometimes the potentially procurement-led desire for maximizing price, best pricing or value or efficiency?
Ooh, the P word.
Yeah, the P word. Yeah. You know what? I think how you do it is embrace it. And I'm being very serious with that response. What we have found is that if we truly bring procurement in and help and educate them and where value is created, we actually get a good outcome. Remember, procurement's only they have a remit, a very clear remit, right, in the company. And if you push them aside, mostly they're working on direct inputs, right? In our case, it's grain, it's flour, it's whatever capital. But if you actually bring them into the fold and explain to them what we do and how value is created, how an agency creates value, then they actually are informed to have a very productive conversation. And last point, we have proof, we know it. A drive to the bottom does not equal effectiveness, right? So it is all the way down, just getting the lowest, dollar, both in service, fee as service, or whether it's the media impression, is not the best way to drive your business forward.
Excellent. I maybe should ask Rob, do you agree?
I do.
Maybe we should ask JSD to leave first.
Yeah, no. It's totally transparent. I mean, certainly that's an area where we have slightly different agendas. But what we do is we find the commonality. So the commonality is value. We want to provide value. They want value from us. Sometimes the price equation is obviously different objectives. But what we do is we sit down, and it's there's hard yards sometimes. But at the end of the day, we get through it by saying, look, what do you guys really need? What can we really provide that's of great value? And we find a way to meet in the middle there.
Excellent. We're going to leave it at that. A couple of really important things. First of all, you want to know where lunch is, so I'm going to tell you that, so stay for that. But there's also our Emerge Showcase, which is where you get the chance to interact and meet with a number of wonderful startups that we have brought to the festival here. But before we get to that, thank you, Rob. thanks to JSD for your wonderful relationship. I think you guys need to buy a ring for each other at some point. I think that's